Hello, everybody. Welcome to our SparkFest panel. We're really excited to be here. This session is all about breaking the mold and daring to disrupt. My name is Elise Collette. I'll be co-hosting once she jumps on with Sasha Marmalik, who is my co-founder of our business, FRDM. And so I'll just give you a little bit of a background about how this session came about and why we went with this theme. Sasha and I have co-founded a business called FRDM, or Freedom, and it's a subscription-based online store. So we're really on a mission to disrupt the fashion industry with a circular model. So people can subscribe and then they can rent clothes as they would like. So kind of like using Zara as a library, kind of like the original Netflix model. That's what we're really aiming to do, creating something where you can always be wearing something new, but it's completely sustainable because those clothes are being broken down and made into those new, more fashionable, more stylish, on-trend items. And so as we've been tackling this over the last 2 years, we are constantly, absorbing all the books, podcasts, talking to everyone, and just going, okay, is this a bad idea? Is it a great idea? Are we too soon? Is the customer base not there yet? We've got some really strong core values which dictate our business model and can be limiting to what we can do in order to stay aligned with those values. So we're navigating that industry. And so we had all these questions. And when the opportunity arose to host a SparkFest innovation panel, we thought, oh my gosh, what a good time to bring all of these types of people together. I know we're not the only people who have these questions. And then there's some really stellar people who have tackled or are still tackling these questions. So we put together this panel. We collected all of our favorite, most inspiring people who are really disrupting their industries. And so we've got a really epic panel, and I'm really excited to introduce them now. So our panelists are, to start, Jess Dadden. So she's one half of this incredible, stylish sister duo behind How to Live. It's a creative kind of daily diary that started back in, I think, 2012, and they grew into this massive global tribe of incredibly stylish international fans, and then started running Twoobs, which is a line of comfortable yet fashion-forward and animal-friendly sandals, which is quite different for that traditional footwear industry, which is often a lot of leather. And they are also hosting weekly chats and empowering women and inspiring business people on the How to Live podcast. So Jess and her sister Steph are really trend-setting creatives, and we're really, really excited to chat to them about how they've kind of disrupted that fashion industry. Benjamin Young is the CEO and founder of Frank Green, so a serial entrepreneur, a caffeine enthusiast, an incredibly passionate environmental advocate. Frank Green, the reusable cups, I'm sure most of us have one on our desk at the moment, is born out of this desire to reduce and completely obliterate, really, the use of single-use plastic, and also a love of well-designed style and innovative products. So Ben's put in, years and years, hours and hours of planning, questioning, why does it have to be done this way? Can we make it better? Meticulous design, fierce engineering. And so it's really no surprise that Frank Green is really blowing away that reusables industry. And then finally, Erica Gerard, so a total fluffhead, that is. So she's the founder of sustainable beauty venture Fluff Cosmetics. I've got my little lip oil here, which I absolutely love. So makeup's supposed to be fun. And so that's why Erica created Fluff. So she's an entrepreneur. She's got this kind of unwavering talent time and time again for building these unique businesses, disruptive brands. So starting back at co-founding a copywriting agency and creative agency, Willow and Blake, to skincare company, Frank Body. And you've even owned a cafe and written a children's book. So pretty amazing suite of talent that we've got on the panel today. But thank you guys all for taking the time to join us. We're really, really excited to kind of ask some questions and get your perspective. So I will stop talking now, and I would love, maybe we'll start with Ben, then go to Jess, then Erica, just so that we don't all jump in at once. But a question for all three of you, just feel free to add on to what I've just said, but it'd be really awesome to kind of briefly understand, I know you've all got crazy long journeys, what inspired the idea that you're currently working on at the moment?
Well, thanks, Elise. My inspiration is just about trying to be great at something. I think it comes from a real kind of deep, it kind of need to look at some problems that we have in this world, and single-use plastic is one of those, and how plastic is nature's cancer, and how there's 150 studies thereabouts that link our plastic consumption with cancer and other health issues and that kind of thing. So and then you think to yourself, well, why don't people use reusable products? And that's because they lack style and functionality, and there's definitely not necessarily a brand behind it that people can really work towards and root for. So that's where Frank Green started. As a young kid, I just saw plastic in estuaries and beaches and all that kind of thing, and I didn't know how to deal with it as a little kid. So I just kept trying, went through my corporate career, and then you decide that that's enough to get off the hamster wheel, and then that's where Frank Green started, and it's been an amazing journey over the last 5 or 6 years.
Amazing. Awesome. Hi, guys. Thanks so much, Elise. I'm very excited to be here and such a big fan of Fluff and Frank Green. So it's pretty exciting for me to have Tubes alongside that. So my sister and I, we started Tubes in 2016 as vegan comfortable footwear, and that was a big gap that we saw, being animal lovers ourselves and also massive fans of comfortability. As women, we're so often being told that we need to wear high heels in order to make us look good and desirable, and I just think that that is a load of BS. So it's been a really interesting journey. Now vegan footwear, I think, is becoming expected from brands, which I personally am super excited about. But definitely when we started it 4 years ago, it was super new. And the thing that's inspiring me right now is a sustainability pivot that we are undergoing. I could talk about this forever, but I will just say that, the average American buys 8 pairs of shoes per year. And when I heard that statistic, I felt absolutely sick. So it's a really exciting time in our business to try and figure out how to tackle that problem while still selling shoes. It's an ongoing issue that we're looking at, but we've come up with some really awesome ideas. And definitely still feeling as excited and inspired as we were on day one of the business.
Amazing.
Hey guys, so I guess similar to everyone on this panel and a lot of people who are starting a business, my journey across the few businesses I founded, and especially with Fluff, was it being born out of a frustration with what was currently or what was available at the time. So I had spent about maybe 6 years in the advertising industry and 3 to 4 years concentrated in the beauty industry, and started to just become a bit disengaged and disheartened with what I was seeing product-wise, content-wise, and I guess from a company positioning and what founders were caring about. And I started my first businesses when I was super young, so a lot of this stuff was things that I just had to learn as I was experiencing it. And as I was growing up as a person, I was realizing what I really cared about. And so when I chose to leave Frank Body, I really sort of thought about what it was that I wanted to do. And I had learned so much in the beauty industry that I felt like I couldn't leave it, and that I had one more brand in me. And that brand was one that took a more responsible route to particularly their messaging, but also the products that they produced. So refillable beauty 3 years ago wasn't a thing at all. I'm really happy that it's now becoming a standard, just like vegan footwear, or this sort of, I guess, move towards more sustainable packaging options. But it does open this huge sort of black hole and a million questions about what is sustainable and what is the most responsible thing a business can do, and how do we communicate that to our consumers along the way. But that's really exciting amongst the challenges that it presents.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it sounds like all three of you really have identified these massive problems that you were experiencing, and a lot of frustration with maybe what you like. It's seeming simple, like why isn't there footwear that is comfortable and looks great? Why isn't there beauty that kind of is empowering women versus trying to tear them down? Why isn't there products that last a really long time and look great? So it sounds to me like you really did set out to be disruptive. Please tell me if that's incorrect. But if that is the case, I'm really curious to know kind of what disruption means to you, or what you feel like makes something disruptive, because I think if we've heard on a lot of podcasts and stuff, a lot of brands kind of are setting out to solve a very small specific problem, and often it develops out really more big. So like, for example, Airbnb set out to be just like some accommodation for big conferences. When hotels and stuff got booked out, they're like, oh, what if we can just find some more conference space? And then now look at what it is now. And so it sounds though like all three of you really have these big visions of the change you want to be creating in the world that you want to see. So I guess, just to repeat the question, what does that disruption look like to you, or what does it mean to you, and how can people kind of tackle that, go out and be disruptive?
I'm happy to maybe start. I think my idea of disruption has really changed over the years. I like talking to people or suggesting when they don't know where to start about like why it is that they're existing and how would they do differently. When we started Fluff, and I still really believe that the world doesn't need more makeup. There are enough products out there. I could probably argue that we don't need more shoes in the world, and maybe we don't need more mugs, like we all have mugs and could go and take that to a coffee store. So it's like, why do these businesses need to exist? Why do I need to create more makeup? And our idea was that we wanted to offer this alternative narrative in the beauty industry and really disrupt the content and the messaging that was being put out there by brands, and to offer this alternative to you are more with the more products you wear, and that beauty equals makeup or what you look like. We wanted to open this discussion that beauty was more than makeup, which basically begs the question, well, then what else is it? And that's why we exist, to keep asking that and to, I guess, disrupt the feed on social, which is what so much of beauty is tied to now, particularly on Instagram. And so we wanted to present a different narrative. And that's what I always say to people, like, what is the different conversation that you're going to be having? What are you going to be challenging people to do or challenging their views on?
I love Fluff so much. I think that what you guys do is so cool. And I will add to that the disruption, while previously maybe have been about convenience, making our lives easier, the disruption that's exciting me moving forward is the idea that people value profit, people, and planet all equal. And I think that is actually what business looks like moving forward. And so I think that while it does feel like things are super saturated right now, I would argue that most industries are ripe for disruption if you're willing to take on that massive challenge, because I think that the bigger guys are creating 5-year, 10-year plans right now. But, I can tell you as a small footwear brand, Steffi and I have turned a sustainable collection around in 5 months, and so to be able to be small and agile is such a benefit. And if you're willing to kind of take the ego out of it and actually ask yourself, what do I want to create and how can I make this place better for everyone? That's a really beautiful place to start.
Totally. I'm really embarrassed. I have a guide dog and he needs to go out to his trainer in 1 second. So I'm going to jump out for 1 sec, but Ben, please go ahead.
Sure. Hey, so for me, disruption just means a better world, but doing it, because the word disruption to me is not necessarily the nicest word. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to, in a sense, I think disrupt everyone. We're actually trying to bring make it harmonious in a sense of, understanding how the world had potentially, got misinformed about, if it's beauty or footwear and that kind of thing, and reusable cups. And we're trying to just put it together that where we are most impactful in terms of returning, the status quo back to some type of normality, where we don't have to, every single time we have some beauty cream, where we don't have to have brand new packaging again. We can deal with that footwear, So for me, that's what disruption's about, is doing business in a purposeful way that is as harmonious as possible. That to me is what disruption's about, because everyone else is doing it, in a way that is just like how it's been done in the past, and that's the reason why we are in this mess, in a sense. And that's why enough's enough. There is an emergency, I would call it. It's not anything else but that, but it's not too late. and we can do it by banding together as a collective and as a community, I think.
I think that's a really nice distinction, actually, with disruption and harmony, because if you just break down the words, which I'm going to do because I'm a writer at heart, like disruption feels fast and it feels intrusive and like offensive. And I think the way that businesses have been, I guess, informed over the years or told to operate is hard and fast, and to make a lot of money and sell out within a couple of years. And this is the influence of VC culture and definitely, I guess, the American standard of business. And I definitely fell to that kind of pressure in my previous business at Frank Body. Whereas with Fluff, I'm really trying to, I think now after 3 years, take that more slower, harmonious route where we are working with our consumers to have these really intimate conversations and set a standard for the industry, but work together in doing that, because disruption almost feels like you're putting yourself on one side of the fence and everyone else is on the other. And that's not the right way to go about it.
I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because I feel like, at least for us, like Sasha and I are still working full time around working on this stuff at FRDM. And sometimes we feel really anxious, like we're going too slow, and like things aren't happening fast enough. I know I've heard both of you, Jess and Erica, talk on podcasts about this overnight sensation, and maybe you've experienced it in some ways. I know with the first blog you had, you within 6 months, you had thousands of followers. Hey, Sash, so good to join. Thanks so much for coming in. And then Erica, like Frank Body, obviously went crazy pretty rapidly as well. And then starting second things, so launching a shoe line or launching Fluff, you've had a different approach or maybe had different results for whatever reason. And I feel like it's really interesting to think that mindset of like, can you take 10 years or 12 years to build a business and then it clicks and you see that growth, or does it just take this nice long linear approach, and what does that look like? And I think for me, there's always that question: is it not working? Like, is it time to give up, or is it time to pivot? Even sometimes you see people chasing these dreams and you go, is it just a matter of perseverance? Like, will they just get there if they just don't give up? Or is it time to know when to quit and time to move on? And so how have you guys navigated those challenges when, either Erica, you're constrained by certain values, and maybe there's an easy way that you could win, so to speak, the market or something, and you go, no, we can't do that because it doesn't align with our values. And same with you on Tubes, Jess. How do you guys know when you just need to stick it out because maybe the customer isn't ready yet and you need to educate them and bring them forward, versus going, no, this model just doesn't work? Like, how do you navigate that line? And Ben, feel free to speak to that as well. I'm really interested to hear from your different angles and experiences.
You go, Jess.
I was just going to say, I'd maybe even take it one step back and say, like, why are you doing this? Like, you guys with FRDM, I'm sure you really enjoy it, right? Like, it makes you happy. It makes you excited. It makes you feel like you're creating a difference in the world. And so totally fell into the trap of wanting overnight success, absolutely. But that was before I defined what success meant to myself. And now that I've kind of taken that step back and done that work, everything just flows so much easier, and I can see very clearly something with Tubes, if it's not working, whether it's, an our problem, whether it's a customer issue, whether it's a communication issue. I just feel like now that I've taken a step back and I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm able to make educated decisions a lot easier than I was before. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm just going to throw that out there.
You're saying like it's more of your alignment of your own personal values, but also with your business. So once again, it's kind of harmonious. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's harmonious. And also, like, ultimately, why do we do what we do? Like, yes, I want to impact the environment. Yes, I want to create something really cool. But also, if I wanted to do the best for the environment, maybe I would just sit on my hands and not create more shoes. Ultimately, like, this is what makes me excited. I love it. I love being able to get up every day and be really excited about what I'm doing. So rather than, looking to some exit in 2 years' time and I need to like create really rapid growth, can I not just enjoy where I am right now? Can I not just appreciate what's in front of me? And then actually, I think that by having that view, your business seems to like take really nice, harmonious turns, rather than like square peg, round hole vibes. Why isn't this working?
Mm-hmm.
I think absolutely. That patience.
Go ahead, Erica, please.
Sorry, I was just going to say that I do think patience and persistence are crucial to a founder, and if you don't have either of them, you're going to struggle in business. And it's something that you kind of have to learn and hone, and having people around you, I think, in a similar position is really important, so that you don't feel alone, or that you can bounce off these frustrations or work through those periods where it feels like nothing is moving. But with, crazy growth, there comes a whole lot of other problems that you have to deal with as a founder. I think for me, what I experienced at Frank Body was sort of playing a very strategic game in scaling a business. And I had that opportunity, and still have that opportunity every day, to roll out a very similar strategy with Fluff. But if I was going to do that, I probably would have just stayed at Frank Body then and saved myself a lot of time and money and stress. But I had this sort of calling to do something different and something on my own, and something that was more responsible across various sort of degrees of the business. And that's how I do feel really fulfilled at Fluff. And it has still been, or it is still, a struggle some days at the pace at which we are going, because I'm inherently set up to go fast. And my experience over the years was to go really fast, and I got that instant gratification and validation. But there is a whole new sort of sense of meaning that I derive from Fluff, and I guess a certain level of awareness that what we're building is going to last longer, and that when I maybe leave the world, or just let's say when I leave this business, that it will live on past me, and I will have created something that people will remember, not just a product that they consume.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really awesome, because I think businesses nowadays are so values driven, and that's what consumers look for. Like, they don't just want someone that's just making things, but at the same time, they still need things, right? Like, people aren't just going to always use things that were used 50 years ago. So, it's that internal battle of like, oh, I do really want a new pair of shoes, or I do really want to wear some makeup and feel really great about myself. But I want to have a really stylish, bottle in yoga class, but I don't want to feel like guilty for consuming too much. And so businesses really stepping up that are run by people like you, who have those really strong values and are really trying to change things and check the supply chain and go, just do it. Does it have to be done that way? Can we do it differently? It's really, really amazing. I should add, for anyone who is listening, if you want to jump in and add a question in the comment section, we will try and have a bit of time at the end for Q&A. If we are not asking any questions you would love to know for either all three or one of our panelists, please feel free to jump in and put them there. I guess my next question is, again, having listened to so many business stories, how I built this, all of these different podcasts around business and different industries, going to events and hearing panels like this, it seems that there's really, really not one path to success. There's not one right way to build a business. You'll hear one story that's just completely different from the other. And so I guess each of you have kind of built or had successful careers in multiple different ways. So do you feel like you have started to identify those keys to success, whether it is just patience and persistence, or whether there's specific ways of thinking, ways of acting that every business kind of needs to have to set itself apart or be disruptive, or ultimately, find that success that they're looking for? Do you think there's a specific ingredients that makes that happen? Kind of yes or no. I'm more than happy, Jess, if you wanna start.
Yeah, I think ultimately I would say persistence, and almost like this level of stubbornness really sticks out to me when I look at mine and Stephanie's journey. We've now been in this game for 8 years, maybe more. And I feel like we've seen so many businesses come and go, so many of our friends starting businesses, so many of our peers. And it's not that our idea was better, and it's not that we're smarter, and it's not that we knew what we were doing more, because trust me, we didn't. But I do feel like there was this level of sticking to it. And ultimately, I love to call us long-term relationship people. We just like jump from long-term relationship to long-term relationship. So when we were starting this relationship with Tubes, it was going to work, because if it didn't work, we would stick it out and we would try to make it work. And if one thing wasn't working, we would try something else, and we would try something else. We would try something else, But when we first launched our collection, I remember the comments. People were saying that they looked like orthopedic shoes. And people would write like, what do you mean they're vegan? Like, does that mean you can eat them? And so it definitely in no way was an overnight success. It's been really intense, hard work. But yeah, just that level of like stubbornness and persistence that we bring to everything, I think has really, really benefited us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do think everyone's business journey is personal, and like you said, Elise, you can read a million podcasts, but you're going to come up against your own battles. I think that for me, or what I'm focused on right now, and something that one of my investors and now kind of unofficial mentors sort of said to me at one point, was try to make fewer decisions a year and focus on making like 20 good decisions. Because when you're starting a business, whether you are founding it on your own or with partners, there's so many things you could do every single day. And it's very easy to get distracted and overwhelmed and have decision fatigue, essentially. And I get distracted by those things. I am kind of a big picture person as opposed to in the details. So my heart and my head is always being drawn to things that kind of would satisfy that bigger vision. But I need to pull myself out of that at times and be like, is this, relevant to our core business and what we're trying to achieve? Like, is this the best decision I can make right now, or is it just a distraction? And I think that probably one of the best decisions, or the biggest decisions we are looking at Fluff right now, is around our team and the people we bring into the business. And it's very easy, I think, to rush those decisions as well. But I would say hire like your life depends on it. Business is just a series of relating to people as well, and you are hiring human beings, not robots. And that has been sort of integral for me over the last years, learning how to manage people and learning what they want to achieve within Fluff, and how it's this sort of two-way relationship. Like, they give to us, but I need to give back to them. So I think that's really important, whether you are hiring staff or whether you're choosing a business partner or co-founder. Like, establishing those relationships and value sets is super important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more around the people side of things. Frank Green as a business has, the truth is it has been difficult at some times, just in terms of people, because they weren't aligned with what the values of the business was. Like, imagine someone turning up here for an interview with a single-use coffee cup, right? And that should be the biggest flag, that their values aren't necessarily aligned with Frank Green's. But in the past, we would have hired them based on other things, right? So I just think, that hiring decision is super, super important, and that alignment and that harmony, that you can all work together. And when there's tough conversations, you can always go back to your true north, which is your values are aligned. I think that's important, and that's where I'm super thankful today. And, and I think that the virus kind of helped this, is in we've got a very kind of new, progressive team with all of our values being aligned. And in this day and age where you can't use your reusable cup at a cafe based on the virus and that kind of thing, our business would have gone bankrupt, but it hasn't. It's never been so profitable. We've never had so much growth. And that's all because, I think, of the people that we have working for our business now because of that. So, it's a really proud moment to be to be at the helm of this business right now, based on hiring the right people to help every part of our business. And in addition to that, the people side, which I've never been so passionate about, is both purpose and also solving consumer problems. You've got to make sure that you do the research, you understand the trends of the influences, and what would happen if consumers were more educated. So if you understand that and build that into your business, as in terms of your business model, I think it puts you in good stead. There's no way in the world down the track that you're going to be able to get beauty creams or beauty products in single-use containers. The government's going to outlaw it. So that's why it's an awesome time to start your business, Erica, and get on with doing that, because people are going to vote with their feet once they realise that products aren't recycled, because the economics of recycling don't stack up, and people genuinely want to be part of something in the solution. So that's where I have faith in humanity, and that's why Jess and Eric, your businesses are doing well because people generally want to do well, and I think it's all about psychology and understanding what drives people. And if you can put that into your business and make sure you absolutely solve a consumer problem, but there's benefits in it for the government, for everyone that's along that whole sort of supply chain, that's what put you in good stead. It's so hard. You don't want one thing to be up against you, because it'll probably sink you with the noise that's in the economy and all that kind of thing in the world at the moment. So that's my little bit of advice on that.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds like definitely clear. Oh, can you hear?
Yeah. Sorry, my apologies for the lack of audio, but I've joined the conversation. It's been really interesting. I think that's such a fascinating point you make, Ben, about solving that bigger world problem. It's definitely something Elise and I tackle, with trying to find those small quick wins, but then also finding that balance between the bigger, larger, definitely more difficult problem that all three of your businesses are definitely trying to solve in their own respective industries. The next question was, breaking the mold and being disruptive often makes people a target for negativity, hate, and abuse. In a world that's more interconnected than ever, particularly in 2020, with we're all over screens, and cancel culture and trolls, etc. How can you stay the course and not get deterred by this and stick to your why, essentially?
I'm happy to say something on this. I think what's interesting for all three of our businesses, or all four of our businesses, is that we somewhat came up with these ideas perhaps before the rest of the world was thinking that way. And it's very challenging when you feel like you're from the future and you're trying to come back and tell people about what is ahead. They either think that you're crazy, or they think that you have a chip on your shoulder, or they just don't understand or don't want to understand. And that can be very deterring. But I think it really is about finding the people who get it and who want to listen. So I always say to people, or when we started with Fluff, our goal was to find 100 girls at the time who understood our message, and then ask each of them to introduce us to a friend. And you just start seeing these economies of scale, like building that sort of first group or following of people who truly live and breathe your brand, who aren't just going to say, or aren't just going to buy your product and use it. They're going to buy your product and then they're going to take photos and send it to their friend. They're going to forward your emails to people in their office, people who truly live and breathe those values and ideas. And this is how I think you start seeing that you're building so much more than a product, but this sort of brand and company that's led by values that will be around for a long time. But it is a really big challenge when you're from the future, because you actually can't expect to just come and start screaming about where the world is going to be and how it's going to be better. You sort of need to find a middle point where you can speak to people on their level and meet them where they're at, and not overwhelm them with ideas or products or solutions that they're not ready for yet. It'll just never be received well. And that's sort of how you kind of want to survive and hold on, so that when they do start coming around, you are there with the solution and you've been there all along, and your solution is like grounded in values, not just jumping on a bandwagon. Like, you are the thought leader in that space.
I would also add, in terms of cancel culture, obviously it can be a scary time to be in business and a scary time to put yourself out there. In my experience, I would say that there's real value in being completely open and honest about your mistakes. I think it's completely fine that people make mistakes personally. I think that we are only human. And as long as you are being totally honest and transparent when you do, and you have sincere want and desire to do better, I think that that is completely fine. And sure, you might come up against some naysayers, but I think that ultimately, if you know what you're doing and in your heart it's true to you, then that's the only way forward. So I would not let that deter you. Stephanie and I have had to have some super difficult conversations on our podcast over the last year and a half, because that's what comes with letting people in on your journey. But I think that anytime we have been really scared to have a conversation, that's when like some real magic happens, and we might turn someone who's bought tubes once into someone who's actually like so pro the brand and really like gets out there and spreads the message.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think
you go, Erica.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Elise, that the reality of business or building a company today is that there is so much competition, and any one consumer has available to them millions of pieces of content and hundreds of thousands of brands that they can choose from. So it's not enough to just create a product similar to someone else. You have to stand for something. You have to invite them into your world. You have to have an opinion on social and political topics. This is how people now differentiate their buying decisions. 3 years ago, maybe brands didn't have to say anything. Brands didn't have to have a founder. Now it's more important than ever that consumers can look on your website and be like, who started this? What do they care about? Can I text them and say hi? It's crazy, but it is the way that the world is going, and it's the way that brands and businesses will differentiate themselves.
Yeah, it seems like leaning in, especially with Gen Z in particular, coming up now and being of that kind of consumer purchasing age, that they really like things honest and authentic and imperfect, and they like to see, like, for people to call things out how they are, and they don't want, I guess, that BS that you kind of are all tackling in your own respective industries. They don't like that, and they like to support brands that are standing for something, but then standing for something, especially as such young founders. You're growing and you're developing and you're learning, one, how to reconcile the business industry with the business you're trying to build, but then also just as a human, how to live in the world. And so I think that you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to be basically doing that with a spotlight and saying, I stand for this, but then actually, you know what, we learned this, and now we're kind of like, we stand for this, but like with this caveat of like, and it's so hard and it would be so, just vulnerable to be doing that. And so kudos to all of you for doing that. And I think it'd be awesome for everyone listening who's kind of tackling these more vulnerable side of businesses. I think there's a lot of startup advice on like, here's how you test your market, and here's how you do this, and here's how, it's going to be really hard. You're going to be working 27 hours a day. But then these more deep, vulnerable sides of, tackling an industry that when you're feeling like you're suffocating against corporations or big people, and having conversations like this with you guys is really, really inspiring. I think talking about standing for something and those values leads really beautifully into our next question that Sasha wrote about sustainability. I'll let you ask that question, Sasha.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Elise. It does blend in really nicely. All three of you have sustainable brands. So we firstly wanted to ask, I guess, what's the hardest thing you've encountered so far around making your brand sustainable? And secondly, for everyone listening today, what's one actionable tip, particularly to business owners, that they could implement to make their brand more sustainable? We might start with Ben first, maybe.
Um, I don't think sustainability is hard. I think it's easy, kind of, in a way. Um, because I think there's a lot of choices out there, and you can just make a choice to be sustainable. And I think you need to start from the start. So many people or so many other brands want to partner with our business, and that is probably the same for you, Jess and Erica as well, because they want to borrow your brand to help them with their sustainability credentials. Um, which is okay as long as they want to go on the journey with you as well. But I definitely don't think sustainability is hard. It's a conscious decision. It's just as hard to be sustainable as it is to be not sustainable. You just got to make a decision from day one. For example, when we designed our shipper boxes, we designed them with a certain size so you get 102% utilization of a pallet. That's theoretically impossible, but you actually can overhang, about this much on a pallet to get you a better cube. Some people don't do that. We made a conscious decision to do it, and it stood the test of time, and we're still doing it like that. So they're the things for me. Just sustainability is not hard. It's a choice.
And I think it's really interesting, Ben, because you're coming at it from direct, that is the direct problem you're trying to solve. So arguably you're probably the closest to one, you have to be sustainable, otherwise you're just going to be kind of a hypocrite. But I'd be really interested to hear the other two perspective, because I know it's been more of a journey for both of you, and definitely for us, we've had to take baby steps and make some, okay, we're going to do this at this size, then this at this size, and definitely make it a longer journey versus implementing it from day one. Really keen to hear your guys' perspectives, because I think that's the two ways to do it, isn't it? It's like you feel guilty if you don't do it straight away, but sometimes it actually, it can be more difficult. Otherwise, Ben, you can be our chief sustainability officers for all of us, because you do make it sound very easy.
I will guess
you go.
Launch into a big debate about sustainability. But I think for me, I'm going to speak about Fluff. I get nervous when people call us a sustainable company, and I wouldn't call myself or Fluff a sustainable company. We produce things, and the state of the world right now is not in a sustainable state. We cannot keep going like we are going. We cannot consume the way we consume, and we can't produce the way we produce. What I feel comfortable saying is that Fluff is trying as much as possible to be a responsible company, or we're a responsible company because we are talking about sustainability as a journey, not as a destination that we have reached, because that would mean that there's nothing else we can do. There are so many decisions that I have to work through with a fine-tooth comb at Fluff that is still not perfect, from our packaging to our formulas to the way we conduct business. And we're 3 years into hopefully 20, 30, maybe a much longer journey. And so there are a lot of things that financially and just in terms of viability of getting products out there, we cannot do yet, or there aren't solutions for us. But we really are committed to, and as Ben mentioned, making this choice to finding out and then communicating with our customers, the steps along the way, and being really transparent and saying, for example, right now we use single-use plastic poly mailers. We have been working with a company for the last year trying to understand and make the best choice as to whether you use recyclable or compostable poly mailers, and understanding the compostable process, if it's actually possible. How many of our consumers actually have a compost bin, or is this just ending up in landfill? The dyes and inks used on compostable poly mailers degrading the soil. This kind of education isn't sort of readily available for consumers, and it's also not actually easily digestible because we have so much content available. Our attention span is so waned. I can't tell you in one sentence or one post why you should choose a certain poly mailer over another, but consumers want it delivered in that small bite-sized piece. So it's really difficult, and I think that if I'm going to give any advice, a really simple thing, I would say watch David Attenborough's documentary he just released, and then go and buy Patagonia's book called The Responsible Company. It's $25, and it's amazing, and it's about the lessons they've learned over 40 years. Not 6 months in business, not a year in business, 40 years. And Patagonia, who are heralded as the most responsible company in the world, they did not start off with these intentions to be sustainable. Patagonia was meant to be a profit business for them to support their rock climbing business. And along the way, they realized the damage they were doing. And then once you're exposed to it, just like I have been at Fluff and Jess at Prove and Ben, you realize like there's no other answer, that you have to make these choices to be better, but it's a long journey. The easy part is making the choice, and then it's kind of like committing to that it's going to be long and potentially hard along the way. That's my rant.
I mirror everything that Erica just said so hard. I feel really icky about calling us a sustainable label. I don't feel that in any way we are. You'll go to our website and you won't see the word sustainable anywhere. We are in the process of pivoting towards sustainability. That will always be a journey for us, and using words like environmentally friendly as opposed to sustainable is definitely important, because again, I said it before, but I think the most sustainable thing that any of us could do is stop producing products. Maybe not Ben, because he is getting rid of coffee cups and that's awesome, but certainly on the shoe and makeup front. In terms of something like one thing that I would say, so Erica touched on the mailers there. That is my pet peeve, because we also have been struggling with that, and so many of our customers asking us why we're not using biodegradable, and the reality of it is I don't actually believe that they are sustainable. So I would say that maybe a good place to start in terms of your own offering is packaging, because it is just a really good place to start to think outside the box. So an example of what we've done at Tubes is, traditionally everything comes in a satchel. And then about 6 months ago, I was like, wait, shoes come in a box. Why does our box have to come in a satchel? That's stupid. So now we're about to release at the end of this month a box that is just a shoe box that you also can send in the post. It like seals in on itself, and there is no satchel. So that's just a really great small place that you can start. But it's very layered, and there's a lot of work to be done.
So fascinating. Jess, I loved hearing, I listened to a podcast with you a few months ago, probably now, about when you were talking with Steph about how you're doing the box. And I just think that's a perfect example of being disruptive in such a good, positive way, and trialing something that, thinking outside the box, which is just so critical, I guess, for being successful in your industry, and particularly being along that sustainable path. All that takeaways. I haven't watched the documentary yet, Erica, but it's definitely on my list this week. I think I've heard such fascinating, positive reviews on it, which is awesome. It's almost time, so I might pass it back to Elise just to wrap it up.
Yes, amazing. I'm sorry, we probably aren't going to have time for all the questions that I was hoping to. I know we've had a few little questions, but I will give you guys all contact details, so that if you do have any burning questions, you can get in touch with any of us. And of course, if you have any other questions, you can get in touch with SparkFest, who will get in touch with us. But thank you again to Ben and Jess and Erica for jumping in, for joining this panel, for talking to us about your journeys. I actually feel like I could talk to each of you for like probably 17 hours to like a long podcast series about it. So I think just getting like little bits of your insights and the journeys you're on is amazing, and getting to hear about kind of going slow, taking a step back, connect to your values, define success for yourself, and then go from there and really weave in that patience and persistence on your journey, and know why you're doing what you're doing, so you can take those small steps, make those small decisions, like maybe even scale back all the decisions you're trying to make, and put one foot in front of the other to keep going. And I think, Ben saying, you need to have a purpose, you need to be solving a problem, and then really just weave in that patience and persistence until you get to where you're trying to go. And maybe that's going to be completely different than where you want to go, or where you think you're going, but it's going to be a pretty epic journey. We've got about 30 seconds, and then the other people will literally start jumping in. So I will just wrap up. Thank you again so much for tuning in. If you want to follow along Tubes, they've got How to Live the Podcast. They've got How to Live the podcast Facebook community you can jump into. And of course, at How To, with like the number 2, Live, and Tubes with WOOBS on Instagram. Frank Green is at frankgreen_official, and then of course frankgreen.com.au. They've got some epic Disney and Minions products that have just launched if you want to check them out. Fluff is itsallfluff.com. Instagram is itsall.fluff, and then Erica Gerard as well. You can have a Google. There's lots of really amazing stories and podcasts with her as well. And then all their products, like I said, I love my lip oil and their bronzer and their face oil as well. So everything's vegan, cruelty-free. And then if you want to follow along with FRDM, we're just frdm.com.au. We made it simple. We took out all the vowels. We're at frdm.com.au on Instagram as well. So please feel free to reach out, say hi, and thank you guys so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.